I'm sure you all know the problems with long-term care, and the vaccine rollout in Ontario with respect to long-term care and retirement housing has been no different. Our province has failed to properly protect these individuals, both seniors and persons with disabilities in these facilities. So we've administered, upwards of 400,000 doses of the vaccine in Ontario, and yet we still have failed to completely vaccinate all long-term care residents and retirement home residents. And keep in mind, we've had more than enough time and vaccine to provide both doses to every single individual across both these sectors, yet people are still waiting. And that leaves out the fact that older adults in the community have, for some reason, curiously been excluded from the first stage of vaccination in Ontario, which we know is dangerous and contrary to NACI guidelines. But what I'm most concerned about right now is what happens when the vaccinations are complete, because some elected officials, particularly in my province, seem to think that vaccines are the cure-all for the problems plaguing long-term care. And I want to be clear on something. While the vaccines, sure, will decrease COVID-19 mortality, they do nothing to address the ongoing abuse, neglect, and corruption in an increasingly privatized long-term care industry. I've spoken to hundreds of families over the course of this pandemic, and the things that I have heard will keep you up at night. They keep me up at night. You've read the military reports. I can tell you with certainty that those same horror stories were playing across at countless long-term care homes across the country, and they continue to this day, with no consequences to the bad actors whose negligence contributed to the largest mass casualty in our collective long-term care history. Over 11,000 residents have died to date. I know you raised the issue of national standards earlier this year, and I know you were having talks with the premiers. So I would love to know, we would all love to know, what is the status of those talks, and are we any closer to having national standards in long-term care? Thank you.
Dr. Stamatopoulos, yes, the wake-up call that so many Canadians have had on how we care for elders, our parents, our grandparents, what we've done and not done as a society in terms of ensuring that end of life and retirement is done in dignity and with proper support, and that someone who has worked all their life to contribute to this country be able to spend their retirement in safety and in dignity. This pandemic has not created the problem. It has highlighted a long-standing problem that we can't now look away from. And I am worried that once we get everyone vaccinated and we try to move on to the next thing, we will go back to not thinking too much about the uncomfortable reality far too many seniors live in across the country. And that's why I am committed to national standards on long-term care. Now, I know it's inexplicably become a bit of a political football, which, quite frankly, I don't understand. I understand why the provinces who have been in charge of this for the past decades, and quite frankly, there's nothing new about the fact that long-term care hasn't been adequate, particularly for lower income populations for many decades. There have been many reports and stories and outrages and heartbreaks come through there. We need to make sure we are holding ourselves to account as a society. And my plan is not, the federal government has all the answers. We're going to tell you how to care for your seniors. We don't do a lot of care for seniors in the federal government. It's obviously mostly a provincial responsibility, with the exception of some Indigenous communities where, quite frankly, we haven't done as great a job as many other places. So we're certainly not ones to say, the federal government has all the answers on long-term care standards. But you know what? There are some areas, I think of Nova Scotia and the northwards outbreak that happened there, where it was serious, but the response and the learning that happened, made sure that we haven't seen any sorts of problems. And infection control and prevention and things like that are always sort of secondary, need to be put to the front, particularly during a pandemic. our approach at the federal government is first of all trying to figure out best practices with provinces that do it well. I mean, what did Nova Scotia do so well around northwards that can be shared with the rest of the country? What is BC doing around certain aspects, or what is Manitoba doing around others? Like there are best practices that we should be sharing and maybe come together to and hopefully come together to establish a national framework. The simple bottom line for me is no family member should worry about their parent in a home because of the province they live in. Nobody should have to move across the country, as we do know families move because of inequality in prescription drug coverage, which is another whole conversation we have. Oh, the rare disease drug that my son needs is available in another province, so we're going to move because we can't afford the hundreds of thousands of dollars it would cost over the coming years to treat them. Well, we shouldn't have people shopping across the country for jurisdictions in which they can put their elders, because if they leave them in their own community elder homes, they're not going to get the right quality of care. Every single senior in this country deserves the same quality of care, deserves the best quality of care. And I think this pandemic and the resulting tragedy has highlighted that is not the case right across the country, or even within different provinces. And the federal government does have a responsibility for the life and well-being of every citizen. So it's not a matter of, federal jurisdiction should stay out of senior care. No, we have a responsibility to make sure all Canadians are safe. So we are going to start by working with those provinces who want it and who are eager to it, because there are a number of provinces who said, absolutely, let's figure out what the best possible standards are. We want to offer that to our citizens. And those provinces who don't want to be part of that, well, I think their citizens will be asking some very, very difficult questions about why their parents and grandparents don't deserve the same quality of care that people are getting across the country. It is something I am absolutely passionate about. It is not something about the federal government trying to impose itself on various jurisdictions. It's about making sure that jurisdictions are doing everything they can alongside their neighbors and drawing on their neighbors to serve elders the best way possible. It's coming along, not as fast as I'd like, because of course the provinces don't like the idea that someone would be telling them what to do in their area's jurisdiction. But there has been a failure of long-term care generalized across this country, worse in certain areas. And if we don't act on it, it's not just the federal government or provincial governments who are accountable, it's all Canadians who will be accountable for failures ongoing, because nobody going forward is going to be able to say, oh, well, we didn't know it was that bad in long-term care centers. Well, 11,000 deaths tell us otherwise, and the proportion tell us otherwise. We're going to have to do better.